In times when Mr. Harvey was too ill to record his broadcasts, he turned that task over to the creator and sole writer of the rest of the story. Here's Paul Harvey, Jr.
Now, the rest of the story. Dave was a train hobbyist. For 40 years or more, he tinkered with working scale model steam engines. His Sherman Oaks, California backyard was woven with hundreds of feet of railroad track. His 16 models of famous old puffer bellies comprised one of the country's most extensive private collections. And at 1/8 scale, the locomotives were actually large enough to ride. Now, visitors to Dave's home were understandably impressed, and at least one was inspired. Dave was in his backyard one day working on one of his trains. He thought he was alone. But then a voice awakened him from his deep concentration. It was a friend who'd come to visit. Now, this fellow had never seen Dave's backyard layout before, and he was appropriately astounded. When had Dave found the time to put all that together, he asked. Well, every spare moment, Dave answered. Would his friend like to take a spin around the yard on one of the engines? Would he ever? Now, picture the two grown men riding those tiny trains all afternoon, inspecting them, marveling at them, laughing out loud like children on Christmas morning. At one point, Dave's grown-up playmate scratched his chin. An idea. Why not build a miniature train like this on the grounds of a supermarket? Parents could shop for groceries while their children rode the train. Yes, it was a splendid idea, said Dave. An expensive one, too. But certainly backers could be found to cover the initial production costs. Then the supermarket could either buy the train or simply rent to the concessionaire. Well, Dave's friend was quiet for a little bit. The wheels were turning. I've got to go home, he said finally. I'll call you later. In fact, later was much later before Dave got that call, and then it was a joyously urgent request. Come to my office right away. But when he got there, Dave was just dazzled by a large, carefully constructed relief map. And on that map was a rideable miniature model train and a station house and additional buildings. Remember that afternoon in your backyard? The gentleman asked. Of course, Dave smiled. It was a terrific design, he said, but where was the supermarket? Well, there was none. Right now, I should explain that there are few serious scale model train hobbyists in this country who do not remember Dave as one of them. But that renown achieved in his spare time was eclipsed by his professional accomplishments. You see, Dave was a composer and orchestral conductor. He scored motion pictures. He was musical director of TV's Red Skelton Show and Bonanza and Little House on the Prairie. David Rose. And you know David's friend as well, his fellow miniature railroad enthusiast, because the idea that was born in David Rose's backyard way over half a century ago quickly outgrew the supermarket parking lot concept. You see, David's visitor, the gentleman so impressed by those museum-quality scale models he saw, he was thus inspired to build for himself and for everyone the most magnificent microcosm on Earth. His name was Walt Disney. And, of course, his world built to scale, his model train entwined domain, is Disneyland. Only now you know the rest of the story.
And now, the rest of the story. David Rose recorded more than 5,000 hours of music. He recorded 80 albums of music. He was nominated for Academy and Grammy Awards and won 6 ASCAP Television Awards. He created the background music for Bonanza and provided the music for almost every Michael Landon production, including Little House on the Prairie, Father Murphy, and Highway to Heaven. Back in 1941, David Rose was living at 4020 Long Ridge Avenue in Sherman Oaks, California. Shortly after 1 a.m. on July the 27th, 1941, 31-year-old David married 19-year-old Frances Ethel Gum in Las Vegas. Now, we know Frances Ethel Gum by her stage name, Judy Garland. David described how he and Judy would play with his backyard railroad. He said, "We spend whole afternoons with the fool thing. She doesn't love it as much as I do, but she loves it. She'll come out and play fireman, pull on a pair of gloves, watch the steam gauge, pour the coal in. I'm the boss, she follows orders. Gets coal all over her arms and grease on her face. Looks cute as a monkey." During their marriage, the backyard railroad was called the Gar-Rose Railway, a combination of the names Garland and Rose. Unfortunately, they divorced in 1944, and David renamed the railway Holiday Special. Now, Walt Disney had been a rail enthusiast since he was a child. He dreamed of becoming a train engineer. As a teenager, he sold newspapers, snacks, and other items on Missouri Pacific Railway trains. In 1947, Walt bought several Lionel train sets, but he wasn't satisfied. He wanted more. He wanted bigger. A couple of his animators were also railroad hobbyists. Ollie Johnston had a rideable backyard railway. Ward Kimball had a full-size narrow-gauge railroad he called Grizzly Flats Railroad. Walt wanted one he could ride on too. In August 1948, Walt and Ward Kimball visited the Chicago Railroad Fair, Henry Ford's Museum, and Greenfield Village. It was during this trip that Walt had the idea for what eventually became Disneyland. You see, people often wrote letters requesting permission to visit Walt Disney Studios, but there just wasn't that much to show them. Creating cartoons was a long, tedious process, and Walt thought most tourists would quickly become bored. So he began thinking about a small play park near the studio for tourists to visit. The earliest known written plan for Walt's theme park happened on August 31st, 1948, when Walt sent a memo to his production designer, Dick Kelsey, detailing what he called Mickey Mouse Park. Walt planned for the park to be built on a 16-acre plot near his studio. It quickly became apparent that what Walt envisioned would not fit on 16 acres of land. The plan for Mickey Mouse Park was put on hold temporarily, but Walt still wanted his train. In early 1949, Walt Disney spoke with his machine shop manager, Roger Brogy, and asked if he knew anyone who had a steam-powered backyard railroad. Through a connection in the Southern California Live Steamers Club, Walt Disney, his brother Roy, and Roger Brogy met with David Rose at his house on February the 5th, 1949. The men spent the afternoon discussing, inspecting, and riding David's Holiday Express. Walt loved David's 1/8 scale train because people could actually ride on it. This was the size he wanted. Walt's mind was made up, but there was a small problem. The house in which he and his family lived didn't have a big enough yard to build the 1/8 scale backyard railroad that Walt was envisioning. So on June the 1st, 1949, Walt bought 5 acres of land at 355 North Carrollwood Drive in Bel Air to build a new home and a large, elaborate backyard railroad. Walt had more than 2,500 feet of track, that's about half a mile's worth, laid in what he called Carrollwood Pacific Railway because it was on Carrollwood Drive. He referred to his property, though, as Yensid Valley, Disney spelled backwards. Roger Brogy led a team of engineers to build the locomotive Walt named the Lily Bell after his wife. On Christmas Eve 1949, Walt's employees watched as he tested his new locomotive on a small loop of track which was set up for the studio's Christmas party. On May 7, 1950, Walt ran the Lily Bell on the Carrollwood Pacific Railroad at his home for the first time. Now, Walt spent an estimated $50,000 building the backyard railroad, which was about the same amount of money he spent to have the house built. Walt was so obsessed with scale that he had the coal crushed into 1/8 scale lumps to fuel the locomotive. The caboose had a calendar hung on the wall, a broom, and a working potbelly stove, all in perfect scale. In 1952, Walt's obsession with being in scale made it into a cartoon featuring Donald Duck and Chip and Dale called Out of Scale. In the following year, August 1953, after an extensive feasibility study by the Stanford Research Institute, Walt purchased 160 acres in Anaheim, California. After nearly a year of designing, construction began at the site on July the 16th, 1954. The park opened 1 year and 1 day later to much fanfare, but there were problems. Because of a plumber's strike, many of the water drinking fountains in the park were inoperable. Some guests thought that this was done intentionally to sell more Pepsi products. Vendors ran out of food. Some of the asphalt, that which had been poured on opening morning, was so soft that the heel of women's shoes sank into it. It was less than the perfect opening day Walt had hoped for. For the rest of his life, Walt referred to Preview Day, as he called that Sunday, July the 17th, 1955, as Black Sunday. He considered July 18th, 1955, the day after, as the official opening day, but the current company celebrates the birthday of Disneyland on July the 17th. Today, Disneyland sits on about 550 acres. Disneyland inspired other Disney parks around the world. Now, just in comparison, Disney World in Florida covers over 30,000 acres. Now, I've always wondered why people refer to a business with a poor reputation as a Mickey Mouse operation. Disneyland and the other Disney parks are certainly not Mickey Mouse operations. Well, they are, but they aren't. That makes perfect sense, doesn't it? I'm Brad Dyson. Thanks for watching, and now you know the rest of the story.